Hello, everyone. Happy to see you. And I hope you're ready to dig into John again. I've read this chapter a couple of times now, and I have a lot of different thoughts about it. My thoughts seem to be going in lots of different directions, but I'm just going to see what comes out when I read it today because I wrote a few notes down, but I don't know. I don't feel organized today. So I'm just going to go where the Spirit leads me. But we just finished with talking about Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead and comforting Mary and Martha and how much he loved them and how he wept for the grief that they had to go through. And of course, right after a major miracle like this, as we've seen in so many other miracles that John talks about, right away, the Pharisees and Sadducees are right in there to argue about it. They do not like the people following Jesus. They're afraid this is going to undermine their power. They're afraid of what the Romans might think. Maybe the Romans are going to think this guy's trying to lead an insurrection or something. And if that happens, they will lose the status they have with the Romans, because the Romans had pretty much allowed them to kind of be leaders themselves. So here's what happens in John 11, verse 45. Many of the people who were with Mary believed in Jesus when they saw this happen. Remember, they were with Mary because they were all mourning with her. People from Jerusalem had come to mourn with Mary and Martha. Martha went out to meet Jesus, but Mary stayed with the mourners. But when Mary went out to meet Jesus, the mourners followed her. They figured she was going to the grave, so they went. And therefore, there were all these witnesses to Lazarus' resurrection. And because of that, many people who were with Mary believed in Jesus. But, there's always a but, right? You can't please everybody. But some went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. Tattletales. There's always somebody who's going to run away and tattle, you know? So, yeah, they ran away because they wanted to be troublemakers, or because maybe they didn't believe, so they thought, well, wait till the Pharisees hear this, you know? So they went away and told the Pharisees what Jesus has done. Then the leading priests and the Pharisees called the high council together. So all the mucky mucks are getting together. They're all going to have a big discussion here. What should we do? Oh, that's exactly what they asked. I didn't know that. Okay, this is verse 47. Then the leading priests and the Pharisees called the high council together. What are we going to do? They ask each other. This man certainly performs many miraculous signs. If we allow him to go on like this, soon everyone will believe in him. And then the Roman army will come and destroy both our temple and our nation. Now, they don't really care that much about the nation. What they care about is they're in power, and they don't want to lose that power. And they're afraid that Rome is going to look at Jesus as an insurrectionist and, shake the pot a little bit. At this point, they're going to talk about Caiaphas, the high priest, who was probably one of the leaders of this high council. And the high priest, remember, originally would have been appointed by God and been a successor through Moses and Aaron, and then down through the priestly line. But at this point, the Romans just appointed whoever they felt like appointing, and mostly that was maybe purchased, maybe somebody, a little graft, you know what I'm saying? And so the high priests now many of them were evil, and they held this job because they wanted power, not because of a priestly duty to help the spiritual lives of the Jews, which would have originally been how it was set up. But it had become a political appointment. So now we're going to talk about Caiaphas. This is in verse 49. Caiaphas, who was high priest at that time, said, "You don't know what you're talking about. You don't realize that it's better for you that one man should die for the people than for the whole nation to be destroyed." He did not say this on his own. As high priest at the time, he was led to prophesy that Jesus would die for the entire nation. So there's a double entendre here. Okay, that means a double meaning, right? A double meaning. Caiaphas is saying something evil. But because he does hold the priestly appointment, he still could prophesy. And Jesus can use even evil people to get his word out there. And this was a prophecy. He didn't even know he was prophesying, you know? Truer words were never spoken, but he did not mean them the way that theologically we know it's true. One man dying for a whole nation, Jesus dying for the world. I was trying to figure out some extra meaning of this and kind of, dig into it a little bit. And I found a commentary written by Calvin. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I thought this was interesting. It says, then one of them named Caiaphas. Oh, that's the verse he's referring to. Then one of them named Caiaphas. So he's referring to that verse and explaining it. And he's saying, it was a short consultation, for Caiaphas did not allow them to hesitate for long. He holds out that there is but one way of purchasing safety, and that is to slay an innocent man. To what pitch of wickedness do men proceed who, destitute of the fear of God, form their own plans rather than the judgment of their flesh than from the word of God, and who confidently believe they will derive advantage from that which is not permitted by the author of every blessing. For what Caiaphas meant may be thus expressed: they must provoke the wrath of God in order that they may be happy and prosperous. Interesting. Wherefore, let us learn never to separate what is useful from that which is lawful, since we ought to not to expect any prosperity or success, but from the blessing of God, which is a promise not to wicked and rebellious persons who ask assistance from the devil, but to believers who sincerely walk in their ways. I think it's formal language, so it's kind of hard to understand, but he's saying here Caiaphas has a wicked intent. I mean, his intent was basically not to save the nation, but to save his own skin and save his own position. And better that they kill one guy, even though he was innocent, than rock the whole boat and change the whole system. That's what he's saying. We're going to lose our jobs. Our nation won't be the same because we won't be the leaders anymore because, the Romans will get upset. He's just strictly looking out for himself. He's not thinking about really the nation or anything else. But what he doesn't realize, according to John, is that even his very words condemn him, because his very words are a prophecy for what's really, really happening here. They think they're in control to slay this innocent man, but really it's God's plan. It's God's plan that is there from the beginning, that God himself will come down to be the shepherd. God himself will come down to be the Messiah. Really interesting. Caiaphas doesn't even know what he's saying here. So let's go back to the text now. Let's see. We're on verse 53. So, from that time on, the Jewish leaders began to plot Jesus' death. Jesus' death did not happen suddenly. It wasn't like all of a sudden they all said, hey, come on, let's kill him. No, this took a long time. They were thinking about this for a really long time, from the very beginning of all these miracles. And now this ultimate miracle of raising somebody from the dead was like too much for them. They're like, okay, now let's get some details here. Let's plot. Let's make a plot for the death of Jesus. As a result, Jesus stopped his public ministry among the people and left Jerusalem. Interesting. Nothing goes unnoticed by God. Okay? He is waiting for this perfect time. He wants Jesus to come to Jerusalem at Passover so that as the Passover lamb, he will be the fulfillment of the Passover freedom that they're celebrating. And he doesn't want it to happen anytime sooner than that. So Jesus, according with his Father's will, leaves Jerusalem. Okay? Now, what's interesting to me is I was thinking about a time of preparation. Right now, yesterday, when I'm speaking to you, yesterday for me was Ash Wednesday, which is the preparation for Easter. Lent is meant to be a time of preparing your heart, looking at your own failings, understanding that Jesus died for that, and just being ready to truly rejoice in it. That's really what Lent is all about. It's not about giving up chocolate, it really isn't about that at all. It's really about preparation, preparing for a celebration. Do you ever notice how all celebrations are more fun when you've spent a long time preparing for them and now the day is here? A wedding is like that. You spend days and days preparing. Christmas is like that. We spend, days and days. We decorate the house, we make special food, we wrap the presents, all that kind of stuff. That's kind of part of the joy of it, isn't it? It kind of prepares us and gets us ready for the event. And that's what Lent is really all about, this time of preparation. Well, at the same time, events are leading up to the crucifixion here in John, and everybody's preparing. Okay, the Jews are preparing for Passover. The Pharisees and Sadducees and High Council are preparing to plot his death. And Jesus is preparing himself. He has to be right spiritually and physically ready for what he's going to endure. And the best way to do that is the same thing we would do. Get away by yourself with some very good friends and spend time in prayer, meditation, and even socializing with people you trust, So this is a time of preparation for Jesus, and he's going away from Jerusalem to do this. Now, we know that his good friends live in Bethany, which isn't that far from Jerusalem. It's only, 4 or 5 miles, maybe 10 miles at the most. But he went to a place near the wilderness, to the village of Ephraim, and stayed there with his disciples. I'm thinking Ephraim means Bethlehem. I'm not sure, but usually that's what it means. Okay, so he's to spend some time there with his very close friends. Do you ever notice how much more relaxed you are with your close family and friends because you don't have to pretend to do anything. He didn't have to do any miracles for these people. He didn't have to show off. He didn't have to be something for them. He just could just be together. Just be together. Maybe he did some teaching. I don't know. But he was with his close disciples. So it was now almost time, for the Jewish Passover celebration, and many people all over the country arrived in Jerusalem several days early so that they could go through the purification ceremony before Passover began. I told you, the Jews are getting ready also. They're preparing for Passover. And at this time, if you were a good Jewish man, you were required to go to Jerusalem to celebrate, okay? And what's cool about this, too, is during this planning time, we can watch now from chapter 12 all the way to the end of John. We're going to have this quiet before the storm, this preparation time, and then we're going to have this crescendo. And events are going to spin and spin and spin and spin until the ultimate event. So this whole part is a build-up to the crucifixion and resurrection. So, anyway, the whole population would have gone to Jerusalem. This is told to us in Deuteronomy 16. Let me read it to you because I looked it up just to see what it would say. Deuteronomy 16:16. It says, 3 times a year, all your men must appear before the Lord your God at the place he will choose, meaning Jerusalem, at the festival of unleavened bread, the festival of weeks, and the festival of tabernacles. No one should appear before the Lord empty-handed. So Passover is one of those 3 festivals, and they were required to bring sacrifices. Another person I was reading was interesting. Another person I was reading described. I know where it was. It was in Jews for Jesus. If you've ever heard of Jews for Jesus, these are people who are of Jewish background, and yet they believe in Messiah. They believe in Jesus as the Messiah. So they maintain a lot of their Jewish customs because that's part of their family and part of their upbringing and part of their spiritual life. But they maintain also a Christian faith in Jesus as the Messiah who's fulfilling all of these rituals and things that they're doing. So on the Jews for Jesus website, There was an interesting sentence that I had never thought about before, that there was really two kinds of purifications, if you will. And this is what the Jews are going to Jerusalem for, to purify themselves before Passover. There were two kinds of purification rites. Okay, one was the purification that would come through the offering of sacrifices, and those were for acts of sin. Okay, so that was a cleansing that the priests did as an appeasement to God in direct response to acts of sin. The other kind of purification was just cleansing yourself because you are in a sinful condition. So we are sinful from birth. We haven't done anything wrong when we're born, but we are sinful by human nature. And there's a purification that goes on that way. So this would mean purifying your body, maybe purifying your utensils that you're going to use, the foods you're going to eat, the things you're going to use to cook your Seder meal, all those things. Everything had to be cleansed as a ritual to remind you of the fact that of God's grace, that we just can't do it all ourselves, but we do this to remember that we need to be cleansed. So lots and lots of people were in the city getting ready for this purification before Passover. Leaders would have also come. That's probably why Pilate was there. A lot of people that were Roman leaders came in because they knew that at that time a lot of rabble, a lot of people would be in Jerusalem, big crowds, crowd control, kind of like. So Pilate didn't necessarily live in Jerusalem, but he was, the leader, and so he felt this is a good time to be in Jerusalem because, there's a lot of people there, and anything could happen. So, that's a good time for them to be there. So anyway, this is verse 55 of John 11. It was now almost time for the Jewish Passover celebration, and many people from all over the country arrived in Jerusalem several days early so they could go through the purification ceremonies before Passover began. They kept looking for Jesus, but as they stood around the temple, they said to each other, "What do you think? He won't come for Passover, will he?" Okay, they're conjecturing here. They want to see him, but they're thinking, boy, if he comes, he's putting his life at risk. Everybody knows the Jews are after him. Okay, there's a big plot to get him. Okay, so meanwhile, by the way, they also think he's going to come because he had always been a Jew who followed all of these Jewish things. He had been at Passover other times. He had been in Jerusalem at the right times, the way all Jewish men would. So in some ways they think he's coming. In other ways they're not. They're, will he or won't he? There's a lot of speculation there. So verse 57, meanwhile, the leading priests and Pharisees had publicly ordered that anyone seeing Jesus must report it immediately so they could arrest him. So everybody knows there's a bolo out on Jesus. A bolo. Remember how they have, they want to get him as soon as they can, They've got an order out there. If you see Jesus, you are required to tell the high priest so we can go out and arrest him. So everybody knows, will he come? Will he not come? I don't know. Priests are after him. There's a big mess of controversy there. So meanwhile, Jesus is out in the wilderness, okay? So a few weeks, maybe 1 week before Passover, it says 6 days, so a little less than 1 week before Passover now. He's gone from the wilderness near Ephraim. Now he's traveling closer to Jerusalem. This is chapter 12 now. 6 days before the Passover celebration began, Jesus arrived in Bethany, the home of Lazarus, the man he had raised from the dead. And a dinner was prepared in Jesus' honor. Martha served, and Lazarus was among those who ate with him. So, here again, he's with his friends preparing. Everybody's preparing. The Jews are preparing in Jerusalem for Passover and wondering, will he or won't he appear? The Pharisees are planning their plot. Anybody that sees him has got to let us know because we're going to kill him. We're going to arrest him. Jesus is preparing, first by spending in the wilderness with his disciples, now moving a little closer to Jerusalem by going to Bethany, which was very close. and meeting with more close friends. People he knows love him because he raised Lazarus from the dead. They kind of have a little celebration dinner here, don't they? Mary is cooking, or Mary and Martha are cooking, Martha's serving, Lazarus is there, everybody's sitting around, they're eating with him, they're having a little time of fellowship. Something astounding is going to happen after this, at this dinner. And we're going to talk about that next time as we go through the rest of chapter 12. Until then, maybe take some time to prepare. Meditation, prayer, read a scripture verse and just think about it. Spend some time just silent before the Lord, preparing your heart. Preparing your heart. It's kind of fun, and it'll make the event much more meaningful when we get to Easter. Have a great day and enjoy.